grain, there's grain, and record. All right, we should be live. We should be live. I haven't seen grain come on yet, but are we live? No, not yet. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, we're live. We're live. We're live. Go ahead.
Hello and welcome to Morning's Culture. Good morning, Sil. How are you?
Good morning, Spina. I'm wonderful. Good morning, Spina. Wonderful. Happy to be here. Happy to be here. I love being here.
Oh, yes.
Great
Good
choice.
morning
Great choice.
to everyone who is going to join us live and will watch us recorded later. You all are most welcome to join Morning's Culture. And of course, you are most welcome to be in this free Morning's space Sil has created for us. The free space, whenever I say free space, just to give you a bit of explanation about that what it is, what I mean by that. Free space is not something that, okay, oh yes, I'm going to just do. It's not a random thing. It's a very deliberate free space. Free space where we can acquire moreness, we can acquire value, usefulness. And this is what is the main reason for creating this space where you can be more of who you are right now. You can acquire moreness. You can discover your own moreness, which is already existing, and you can be yourself. This is what the moreness space for me it means. And I'm a privileged one here who always enjoy this free space, and I can guarantee you that once you understand that what it really holds for you will not going to take it for granted. You will always love to come back because innately we all are good, capital G, good. We all are.
Yes. And this is a space where
And
that's
we love
accepted.
exactly. And we love to be good. We love to do
Exactly.
good. We love to have
Exactly.
good. This is
Exactly.
what natural human state is. At least this is what we understand. This is what we share. And
Right. Right.
having this innate goodness, we want ultimately connected to the goodness. Even the worst
Yes.
act of really horrible acts,
Yes. Yes.
rooted from some sort of intent to do good.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
And
any
that's very
sense
powerful.
when you, yes, when it doesn't make any sense when Sil says first time, and I was like, the horrible acts. He says, yes, the most horrible acts. Even those, if you will go through that, you will find that there was something which
Yeah.
was really pushing them to do something about it. They don't know how to do
Yeah.
this, they don't know what to do, they were not aware of consequences, but
Yeah.
lack of awareness just pushed them to do something really outrageous and all that.
Right.
And then it comes out as the most horrible negative thing
Yeah.
for others, of
Distortions of
course.
goodness. Inappropriate application
Yes,
of goodness. Yeah. Sad,
yes,
sad,
yes.
sad.
And lack of awareness, lack of
Right.
awareness is something. Yes, we all are, we belong to that generations, those generations who has been told that, oh, ignorance is a bliss,
Yeah.
but
No.
actually no,
Nope. Nope. Nope.
no.
Nope. 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 It's a horror. It's a horror. It's a
Yes, it
horror.
doesn't make any sense. Deliberate ignorance on top of the like really horrible thing is it's on top of the list. If you
Yeah.
are
Yeah. Note,
not
note, note,
aware,
note well how Bina pronounces ignorance. Ignorance.
yes.
For many people, that's what it is. They are deliberately ignoring learning. So it's ignorance which makes them ignorant.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, so
I
we
have a
we
question
we
for you.
we are yes.
Okay, carry on when you're done. When you're done.
No, I was just saying that okay, we have to go through all our uh, all our shoulds, like, oh yeah, this is how things are.
Yeah.
All the conventional thinking we have, we need to go through
Yes.
that before
Yes.
really
Yes.
carry on with our life, and of course
Yes.
influencing other people's life, future generations. We need to be very thorough, very
Right.
scrupulous
Right.
about
Right.
this. Okay,
Right.
yes, please continue.
And that's really my question. Is there
Yes.
anything in our interaction and here on when we're doing the lives? Because when we're doing the lives, we're just doing what we do anyway. We're just doing it as a live to share it. Now, is there anything that you feel that you should do? And is there anything that you feel you cannot do during the lives and during our interactions when we hang out together?
The only should is appropriateness, of course. And the one thing I cannot do is that sometimes I cannot carry on with my perspective, because still always in a very appreciative. He always have high energy, and he always like really want to appreciate that. It is not like he wants to cutting it off or like okay yes, but he wants to add. Yes, he really wants to add a lot. He always have that. This is something like really if you don't understand the intent behind that, then it can be like really, oh my god, what are you doing? I was just like just saying that. No, it is actually, it's a way, it's an expression of appreciation that oh yes, this is so profound, this is so profound, I want to share that too. But of course when a person has so much more, you have to
Yeah,
be really okay, a bit more understanding in this sense. Otherwise you cannot have that. I always think I'm a very selfish person. Sorry, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a very selfish person. I
yeah,
always take
yeah,
things okay if what it is, what's there in for me, what it is actually, i need
yeah,
to i need
yeah.
to pay attention to that. So when he's sharing, I always get a lot. When you guys share, I always get a lot.
Right,
So for me
right,
it's not a problem, but
right,
I
right.
need
So
to be, of course, as a co-host. Sometimes there are some shirts which I have to do.
yeah, no, but I mean more in a more specific way. In other words, do you feel that you have to be like compete or be important or like say, or I have to say something important, I have to say something valuable?
No,
That's what I mean.
never.
Do you, no, you don't
No,
ever
never.
feel that,
No,
right?
this is not my
Uh,
mindset. This is
Right,
not
but
my
I mean
mindset at all.
that's also inappropriate from in a monas culture point of view. You don't have to be clever, you don't have to be smart, you don't have to be informed, you don't have to be any of those things. You can just come and enjoy. You
I
can
can,
share. You
I don't need to be,
can you
because
share
this is
your
who I am
ignorance?
already. Okay, so this
Is
is
it
who I am already, so I
okay?
don't need to
Is
be.
right? Is it okay for you to share your ignorance? Like to say, "Oh, so what the hell are you talking about? I have
No
no
problem.
clue what you're saying. I don't
No,
get it." It's like,
I
man, can you explain a bit more? Or like say, man, this is how I understand it. I know what I'm about to say is wrong and it doesn't make any sense. And it's got, but that's where I'm at. I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. Can I share this? Is it okay to do that?
no, but this is not the case with me, so I don't feel
Not
that,
use
because I know
anybody in monas
no,
culture.
but
I'm asking.
yes, but we are using, but okay, we are using ourselves as example. So yes,
Right,
sometimes
but
I don't
let's
agree. I
assume
don't
that was
agree.
you. It would be okay for you
That's why
to
I'm
say I don't know, right?
it's not a problem at all that I don't know.
Exactly,
No,
exactly,
because then I'm not going to be
exactly,
anywhere. No, I will still sitting there wherever I am. So it's not a problem for me. I know that okay, it's
exactly.
completely against the moreness, and of course learning and growing in conventional way also. You need to understand what you don't know.
Right,
You need to
right.
accept that.
But
Oh
what I
yes,
mean
okay,
is,
yes, I don't know.
I'm thinking of it in the context of somebody coming and listening to us, and they're not used to
Hmm.
this openness, and they feel, well, I can't participate because I don't know what they're talking about. That doesn't mean you can't participate. You
Oh
can
yes, oh of
share your
course, why not?
questions, share your confusion, share your opinions,
Yes.
share your perspectives. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be thought through to the end. They don't have to be figured out. They don't have to be complete. They can be incomplete. They can be confused. It's okay. It's okay. And that's the point I'm making, right?
Oh
Just
yes.
using us as examples.
But
That's just
just
fine.
to
It's
give,
not a
yeah,
problem.
just to give you a bit more about this, because I can say that because I'm the one who spent a lot of time, of course, listening to you, and of course sharing with you, and we do things together. So I can say that at least comparatively with other people, that okay, yes, I know a bit more than them. So what is happening, because it's a very sophisticated collaboration. There is no comparison
Exactly.
between what I know and what he knows. There is no comparison, because
Never.
experience, you cannot, first thing that you cannot beat experience in any other way. No,
Right.
experience is experience. The first thing, awareness. If you are not aware, you cannot compare yourself with someone who is aware of that particular topic. Of course, you can learn and you can be aware too. But and at this point, no comparison. Again,
Right.
it's not about ego or it's not about humility. No,
No,
it's about
no.
facts and logic.
Yeah,
Simple facts and
exactly.
logic.
Exactly.
If you are not, so there is no comparison. I can compare myself with my power, my insistence, with my persistence, and my speed of learning with self. Oh
Yeah.
yes, I give him hard time with that because yes,
Wow, it's good. That's
I
good.
I
I love
have
it.
this
Love
ability
it.
that yes, I'm learning remarkably. I know that because I'm showing
Yeah.
that. I'm just stating facts. This is where I can
Oh,
compete with
wow.
him. But
Oh, wow.
with other things, no.
But we don't
Sorry,
need to
there's no
compete. We
comparison.
don't care about competing. It's not an issue
I
unless it
I
helps
I'm
us. Unless it, yeah,
I'm giving you something because
yeah, yeah.
people assume that because oh you don't have anything to compete with. We do have.
Right.
We do have a lot of things to compete with each other. We
Yeah.
don't choose to do that because it's useless. It's not
Correct.
energy efficient.
Correct.
I
Correct.
have so many important things to do in life rather than just competing with my friend. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, I don't have that amount of energy. We don't want that. Yes, there is an assumption that, oh, you don't have that. If I would not have anything to compete with him, I would be a shapeless thing here, like really a blotch. Like, no, nothing. Really, I do have.
Ah,
I
interesting.
do have a
Interesting.
lot.
Different,
But
different perspective
yes,
on it. Yeah.
oh, yes, yes. But it doesn't mean that I want to do that or he wants to do that. If he would be in
Yeah.
competition with me, it would be like really the most hilarious thing because I was nothing, at least in the beginning. I was nothing. If he would be in that competitive mindset, then I would be nothing because I would be thrown out like, okay, yeah, sorry, no. He could really knock me off like, oh yes, son.
Interesting.
So this the
Interesting.
competition
Interesting.
is really the energy
Yeah.
draining, but unless it is appropriate, unless it is appropriate.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes it is appropriate to get into that, but there are these situations I don't know that okay when it will come or when it would be necessary. Some relationships you can choose to not compete with each other. You can really seriously you
Oh, yeah.
can choose to
Oh,
do
yeah.
that. And some yes okay sometimes you have to some like really put your foot on the grounds and say oh no sorry okay now this is no more, but it's not a competition. It's about having trust in your abilities.
Yeah.
It's about having self trust. It's about actually proving that you believe you have trust in moreness. If someone is coming from a superiority paradigm and trying to influence you or anything in your life, then you have to be really okay sorry firmness. Again,
Yeah.
it's not a competition. Competition is very draining. I don't know when it will be appropriate, but again as a moreness practitioner, I always give some margin that okay yes almost always it is not needed but maybe at some point,
Interesting.
maybe at some point,
Interesting. Interesting.
but almost
Very
always you don't need competition at all. And what you can compare with,
right. Right.
we are not same.
Right. Relatively better doesn't mean necessarily mean excellent. It might, but not necessarily. That's the biggest problem with being overly focused on competition. You're only relatively better. It doesn't make you
Yeah.
excellent. Doesn't mean you actually
So
have any real skill. I'm trying to get
okay,
my camera working in TikTok,
you
just for
have
the
read
TikTokers.
10,000 books. Okay, you have read 10,000 books.
More, but yeah,
Okay, okay, more or less. Okay, no, no, more. Okay, more than 10,000.
more. Yeah, more. Well,
And I
about
have,
15 to 20,000, somewhere around there.
wow, okay, wow. Okay, to be precise, okay, 15,000, more or less,
Yeah,
books you have read.
right.
And if I would be silly enough to get into competition, I have read more or less 15 books. See?
Yeah, but what difference does it make? Doesn't matter. As long
No,
as
it
you do
doesn't
it,
make
just
any difference. It doesn't
it
make me
didn't really
less.
add.
No, but
Exactly.
but if I really want to get into competition, I need to first compare myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
So I'm not saying out of
Exactly.
humility or no, it's a logic, it's a reason right there, it's a fact.
Yeah.
So we can get into, okay, if I'm getting into competition with my sister, she has completely different skills and abilities and qualities. I cannot compare myself with her.
Yeah.
Same as I cannot compare myself with Joseph, with Randy, with Norma, with
Right.
Cher,
Right.
with Sil,
Anybody. Can't.
anyone. No, I
Yeah.
cannot. It's useless. It's a silly thing. They all are different,
Yeah.
and we all are different. So there is no
Uh,
comparison at all. And then if you cannot compare, how can we compete?
yeah. Yeah. All
Useless.
right. Well, exactly. And we want to move out of this, but the main point that I wanted to really make with Mona's culture is it's a place where you can just relax. You don't have to do anything. There's no pressure to be something, to perform, to have status, to be special, whatever you wish. Right? You can just enjoy, just share, and it doesn't matter. It's no premium. You don't have to say something clever. Well, yeah, that's the marvel of Mona's culture. Whatever you say is good. Whatever you say is good. Yes, very, very powerful. Yes,
Is someone
very,
having
very
problem
powerful.
with that?
How do you mean?
No, you are saying that okay, you don't need to say anything or you don't need to. So
Oh,
was
well,
there
well, people have a problem.
any
They
kind of
don't say
analysis?
something because they feel they have to say something clever. They have to say something important. They have to be better than. They have to compete. And they don't want to be doing any of that stuff. Well, yeah, you don't have to do all that. You see, you can just do whatever you want to do, and it's okay. There's no pressure on you to do something specific, like be clever, be special, be important, look good, perform, etc. See, none of that matters. All right. So for the TikTokers, this is just going to be a podcast, audio. I can't get the camera to work. I don't know what's up with the camera. So
Wow.
yeah, just the way it is. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. It's very inconsistent. It's quite wild. All right, let's continue. Let's continue with our reading. Let's continue with our reading. Carlos had his great adventure with, and we were struggling with terms, right? Because Carlos
Mm.
was having asking Don Juan, is it a spirit? Is it an ally? And they can be either. And some of the spirits don't necessarily turn into allies because they don't really have any value. The term for them is entities, right? So
Mm.
some entities have value, others don't. Some can become your allies that you can control and use and get to make to do things for you. Others not. Others give you gifts, right? But entity is the term, right? So, in other words, something that exists and it can be corporeal, cannot be, can be insubstantial, can be physical, whatever. Doesn't matter. Entity, right? But not particularly human, even though they might look human. Yes. So entity is the term. Anyway, so Carlos had his experience with the entity where he had to basically just lie there, and the thing experience for Carlos was tapping him, going back and forth, and making sounds and noises, and he was lying there all terrified. I don't know if he needed to be terrified, but this was it. So he had quite an experience, Carlos, right? And so he had to go home and get solid again. That's always what Don Juan tells him, right? When you have these experiences, you have to get solid again. So now we are continuing sometime after this, after Carlos's fabulous experience that he had. Poor old Carlos. Yeah, I feel for him a little bit there, but all right, it happens. Do you want to read, Bina? You want me to read? You muted. You muted.
Sorry, I was not hearing from you. Say it again.
Oh, oh, oh. I say, you want me to read or do you want to read?
Yes, you start and I will join you because I was talking, so now I'm feeling a bit of stress, but I will continue.
All right, all right, all right. You can read the Don Juan parts then. I'll read the Carlos parts. Okay. Oh,
You
yes,
have a very
Gennaro.
specific tone with Don Juan. Like, oh yes, do this.
Does it sound weird once I
No, it
announce it
sounds
that
very
way?
appropriate.
Oh. Oh, all right. Well, all right. I'll read it all today because here's Gennaro too. I mean, you can read Gennaro if you want to, but all right. Yeah. All right. You can have fun reading Gennaro. All right. You read Gennaro. I'll do Don Juan and Carlos. Okay. You're gonna have to pay a little bit of attention
Okay.
here to yeah, yeah. All right. Anyway, here we go. I did not return to Mexico for months. I used the time to work on my field notes, and for the first time in 10 years since I started the apprenticeship, Don Juan's teachings began to make real sense. I felt that the long periods of time I had to stay away from the apprenticeship had had a very sobering and beneficial effect on me. They had allowed me the opportunity to review my findings and to arrange them in an intellectual order proper to my training and interest. The events that took place on my last visit to the field, however, pointed to a fallacy in my optimism about understanding Don Juan's knowledge. I want to reread that. The events that took place on my last visit to the field, however, pointed to a fallacy in my optimism about understanding Don Juan's knowledge. I made the last entry in my field notes on October 16, 1970. The events that took place on that occasion marked a transition. They not only closed the cycle of instruction, but they also opened a new one, which was so very different from what I had done thus far, that I feel this is the point where I must end my reportage. Oh. As I approached Don Juan's house, I saw him sitting in his usual place under his ramada in front of the door. I parked in the shade of a tree, took my briefcase and a bag of groceries out of the car, and walked towards him, greeting him in a loud voice. I then noticed he was not alone. There was another man sitting behind a high pile of firewood. Both of them were looking at me. Don Juan waved, and so did the other man. Judging from his attire, he was not an Indian, but a Mexican from the southwest. He was wearing Levi's, a beige shirt, a Texan cowboy hat, and cowboy boots. Wow. I talked to Don Juan and then looked at the man. He was smiling at me. I stared at him for a moment.
Here's little Carlos. And he doesn't just.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, no matter. You read it however way you want to. The man said to Don Juan.
Okay. Yes. And he doesn't speak to me anymore. Don't tell me that he's cross with me.
Before I could say anything, they both broke up laughing, and only then did I realize that the strange man was Don Canaro.
You don't recognize me, did you?
He said, still laughing. I had to admit that his attire had baffled me. What are you doing in this part of the world, Don Canaro? He came to
He
enjoy the
came.
hot wind. I read on one. That's right. I forgot. Yeah.
Okay.
He came to enjoy the hot wind. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Don
You have no
Gennaro
idea
echoed.
what the hot wind. Okay. You have no idea what the hot wind can do to an old body like mine.
I sat down between them. This is Gennaro, so hot wind likely means something not what we typically think of as hot wind, right? just
Hmm.
be just be
Oh,
forewarned. Just be
okay.
forewarned. There's going to be some play on it, right? I sat down
Okay.
between them. What does it do to your body?
The hot wind tells extraordinary things to my body.
He turned to Don Juan, his eyes glittering.
Isn't that so?
Don Juan shook his head affirmatively. I told them that the time of the hot Santa Ana winds was the worst part of the year for me, and that it was certainly strange that Don Gennaro would come to seek the hot wind while I was running away from it. Carlos can't stand the heat, Don Juan said to Don Gennaro. When it and suffocates. Suffer what? Oh, sorry, that's you.
Suffer what?
Suffocates,
My goodness.
said Gennaro, feigning concern, and made a gesture of despair, which was indescribably funny. Next, that I had been away for months because of an unfortunate incident with the Allies. Unfortunate incident.
So you have finally encountered an ally.
I think I did, I said cautiously. They laughed loudly. Don Gennaro patted me on the back 2 or 3 times. It was a very light tapping, which I interpreted as a friendly gesture of concern. He rested his hand on my shoulder as he looked at me, and I had a feeling of placid contentment, which lasted for an instant. For next, Gennaro did something inexplicable. Pay attention to these little tiny things like the tapping on the back. Stick a pin on them. They're going to be explained later, right? Uh, for the next, Gennaro did something inexplicable to me. I suddenly felt that he'd put the weight of a boulder on my back. I had the sensation that he had increased the weight of his hand, which was resting on my right shoulder, until it made me sag all the way down, and I hit my head on the ground.
Must help little Carlos.
Don Gennaro said, and gave a conspiratorial look to Don Juan. I sat up straight again and turned to Don Juan, but he looked away. I had a moment of vacillation and the annoying thought that Don Juan was acting as if he were aloof, detached from me. Don Gennaro was laughing. He seemed to be waiting for my reaction. Don Gennaro, Don Juan is just trying not to crack up laughing. We'll see the joke later. Anyway, I asked him to put his hand on my shoulder once more, but he did not want to do it. I urged him at least to tell me what he had done to me. He chuckled. I turned to Don Juan again and told him that the weight of Don Gennaro's hand had nearly crushed me. I don't know what you're talking. I don't know anything about it. Don Juan said in a comically factual tone. Oh, let me see if I can do that. I don't know anything about it. Don Juan said in a comically factual tone. He didn't put his hand on my shoulder. With that, they both of them broke up laughing. What did you do to me, Don Gennaro?
I just put my hand on your shoulder.
He said innocently. Do it again.
Okay.
He refused. Don Juan interceded at that point and asked me to describe to Don Gennaro what I had perceived in my last experience. I thought he wanted me to give a bona fide description of what had happened to me. But the more serious my description became, the more they laughed. I stopped 2 or 3 times, but they urged me to go on. The ally will come to you regardless of your feelings, Don Juan said when I had finished my account. I mean, you don't have to do anything to lure him out. You may be sitting twiddling your thumbs or thinking about women, and then suddenly a tap on your shoulder. You turn around, and the ally is standing by you. What can I do if something like that happens?
Hey, wait a minute. That's not a good question. You shouldn't ask, what can you do? Obviously, you can't do anything. You should ask, what can a warrior do?
He turned to me, blinking. His head was slightly tilted to the right, and his mouth was puckered. I looked at Don Juan for a cue whether the situation was a joke, but he kept a solemn face. All right, what can a warrior do? Don Gennaro blinked and made smacking sounds with his lips, as if he was searching for a right word. He looked at me fixedly, holding his chin.
A warrior wears suspense.
He said with Indian solemnity. Don Juan covered his face, and Don Gennaro slapped the ground, exploding in a howling laughter. Fright is something one can never get over, Don Juan said after the laughter had subsided. When a warrior is caught in such a tight spot, he would simply turn his back to the ally without thinking twice. A warrior cannot indulge, thus he cannot die of fright. A warrior allows the ally to come to him when he is good and ready. When he is strong enough to grapple with the ally, he opens his cap and lurches out, grabs the ally, keeps him pinned down, and maintains his stay on him for exactly the time he has to. Then he moves his eyes away and releases the ally and lets him go. A warrior, my little friend, is the master at all times. All right, so I read that in the masculine because this is a specific instruction to Carlos, and Carlos is the he, right? Rather than saying they, to neutralize the gender. So a warrior, my little friend, is the mistress at all times. Okay, just to mourner's culture, we don't want to fall into this habit of default, inadvertent misogyny. Yes, it's a horrible thing. It happens all the time, and we want to avoid that, right? So we change the gender. This can apply to women as well, right? So a warrior, my little friend, is the mistress at all times. What happens if you stay at an ally for too long? I asked. Don Gennaro looked at me and made a comical gesture of outstaring. Who knows? Maybe Gennaro will tell you what happened to him.
Maybe.
Don Gennaro said and chuckled. Would you please tell me? Carlos is so just. He sets himself up for Don Gennaro's humor, right? They can't help teasing him because it's just of how he is, right? Don Gennaro got up, cracked his bones, stretching his arms. He opened his eyes until they were round and looked crazy. Also, Don Gennaro does this. He stretches his and cracks all of his bones when he stretches. So he's having a bit of a joke. He's teasing Don Juan a little bit. But anyway, Carlos doesn't get it quite
Yes.
yet. Uh,
Gennaro is going to make the desert tremble.
Yeah, this is. Oh, I don't know who said that, Don Juan or Don Gennaro.
He
Gennaro's
said, Don
talking
Gennaro.
third person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gennaro is going to help you, Don Juan said in a Gennaro is going to help you, Don Juan said in a confidential tone. He did the same thing to you at his house, and you almost perceived. I thought he was referring to what had happened at the waterfall, but he was talking about some unearthly rumbling sounds I had heard at Don Gennaro's house. By the way, what was it? We laughed at it, but you never explained to me what it was. You have never asked. I did. No, you have asked me about everything else except that. Don Juan looked at me accusingly. That was Gennaro's art. Only Gennaro can do that. You almost perceived then. I told him that it had never occurred to me to associate perceiving with the strange noises I had heard at that time. Now, right here, I have to pause a bit. In the original text, right? I told him that it had never occurred to me to associate seeing with the strange noises. Now I read it and Bina reads it as perceiving because of exactly this reason, that because of Don Juan having used this term seeing, and later in the books he says it's not a good term, it made Carlos think visually. And because of that, when the strange noises, he didn't associate it with perception. He didn't think there was something else. Why? Because he couldn't visualize it. It wasn't visual. And to him, seeing is a visual thing. So sound doesn't fall into that. But of course, it's perceiving. Seeing is a poor term. That's why we change it. We don't want to get into this habit of associating capital P perceiving with the eyes, right? Because it's not a ear thing either. It's perceiving with all of your senses, all the ones you know and all the ones you don't know, right? And very, very potent, right? So let me repeat that last sentence. I told him that it had never occurred to me to associate perceiving with the strange noises I had heard at that time. And why not? He asked flatly. Perceiving means the eyes to me. He scrutinized me for a moment, as if there was something wrong with me. I never said that perceiving is a matter of the eyes alone, he said, and shook his head in disbelief. How does he do it? He has already told you how he does it, Don Juan said sharply. Oh, he has already told you how he does it, Don Juan said sharply. At that very moment, I jumped up and Don Juan began to laugh. The rumble was like a thunderous avalanche. Listening to it, I had the funny realization that my inventory of experiences of sound comes definitely from the movies. The deep thunder I heard resembled the soundtrack of a movie when the whole side of a mountain falls into a valley. A lot of people have this. Their soundtracks and their visual
Oh, yes.
references are from the movies. It's quite fascinating. It's quite wonderful too. Don Juan held his sides as if they hurt from laughing. The thunderous rumble shook the ground where I stood. I distinctly heard the thump of what seemed to be a monumental boulder that was rolling on its sides. I heard a series of crushing thumps that gave me the impression that the boulder was rolling inexorably toward me. I experienced a moment of supreme confusion. My muscles were tense. My whole body was ready for fleeing. I looked at Don Juan. He was staring at me. I then heard the most frightening thump I ever heard in my life. It was as if a monumental boulder had landed right behind the house. Everything shook, and at that moment I had the most peculiar perception. For an instant, I actually perceived a boulder the size of a mountain right behind the house. It was not as if the image had been superimposed on the scenery of the house I was looking at. It was not the view of a real boulder either. It was rather as if the noise was creating the image of a boulder rolling on its monumental sides. I was actually perceiving the noise. The inexplicable character of my perception threw me into the depths of despair and confusion. Why? Why would something that is monumental, something profound, something extraordinary, why would you default to despair and confusion? I emphasize this and I get outraged here. Not because I want to give Carlos a hard time, but because I want to make sure to not have that as a default association within me. I don't have it, I'm pleased to say, but I'm also emphasizing it from a sharing point of view. It's a very big thing. We tend to have this innately. Why? Because we associate unknown with negative. But when we think moreness instead of unknown, change the terminology. Same way as we're changing seeing to perceiving, change unknown to moreness. And now suddenly you don't have to go to depths of despair and confusion. You can go to depths of exhilaration, excitement, moreness, anticipation, eagerness, attention, focus. Yes, understanding, discernment. I figure that's it. A lot of things you
Yes.
could go to. Yeah. All right. So this is very, very important, right? The inexplicable character of my perception threw me into the depths of despair and confusion. Never in my life would I have conceived that my senses were capable of perceiving in such a manner. Isn't this exhilarating, Carlos? I had an attack of rational fright. There's nothing rational about it. In Carlos's mind, it's rational. You mean irrational fright. I had an attack of irrational fright and decided to flee for my life. I just cannot imagine this. It just blows my mind that this is a default for somebody. I know it's not only Carlos, right? I see it in the movies all the time, and I've seen it in real life also with people. It blows my mind. Anyway, mourners culture, we're training ourselves to think and be and act and react and respond in different ways to this. Yeah. Very, very powerful. Yeah. I had an attack of irrational fright and decided to flee for my life. Don Juan held me by the arm and ordered me imperatively not to run away and not to turn around either, but face the direction in which Don Gennaro had gone. Again, where's your rationality? Do you really, really think Don Juan, who you know, God, you kind of know Don Gennaro a little bit, but you absolutely know and trust Don Juan. Do you think he would put you in a situation where you are actually seriously in legitimate harm's way? No, of course not. No, come on, man. What do you want to run away for? If you had to run away, Don Juan would certainly give you a smack on the head and tell you to run, and like he did at other times, right? He, he's not going to let you come to harm, man. Come on. Yeah. Uh, but faced the direction in which Don Gennaro had gone. I heard next a series of booming noises, which resembled the sounds of rocks falling and piling on top of each other, and then everything was quiet again. A few minutes later, Don Gennaro came back and sat down. He asked me if I had perceived. I did not know what to say. I turned to Don Juan for a cue. He was staring at me. I think he did, he said and chuckled. I wanted to say that I did not know what they were talking about. I felt terribly frustrated. I had a physical sensation of wrath, of utter discomfort. Why? Ego. Pure, pure ego. I did not know what they were talking about. Carlos is feeling stupid. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Superiority paradigm, it's a disease. It's horrible, right? Uh, I had a physical sensation of wrath, of utter discomfort. I think we should leave him here to sit alone. They got up and walked away. Carlos is indulging in his confusion. Carlos is indulging in his confusion. Carlos does this a lot. Yeah. Don Juan said very loudly, Carlos is indulging in his confusion. Don Juan said very loudly. I stayed alone for hours and had time to write my notes and to ponder on the absurdity of my experience. Upon thinking about it, it became obvious to me that from the very moment I saw Don Gennaro sitting under the Ramada, the situation had acquired a farcical mood. The more I deliberated about it, the more convinced I became that Don Juan had relinquished the control over to Don Gennaro, and that thought filled me with apprehension. The farce is to try and lessen the impact on Carlos. Yes, they want to collapse his worldview, but they don't want him to die of fright either, or to get so consumed in indulgence and self-importance that he's unable to learn, right? That he gets too out of himself, right? So it's very important that they do this. Don Juan and Don Gennaro returned the task. I mean, Bina, you with me on this, right? I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I just want to make sure that it's explained fully, right? They're doing a maneuver with Carlos, and Carlos is up. Bina dropped off. All right, so we're back in a second. Don Juan and Don Gennaro down next to me, flanking me. Don Gennaro drew closer and almost leaned on me. His thin and frail shoulder touched me lightly, I had when he had tapped me. A crushing weight toppled me over, and I tumbled onto Don Juan's lap. He helped me to sit up straight, and I asked in a joking tone if I was trying to sleep, and asked in a joking tone if I was trying to sleep on his lap. Don Juan Canaro seemed to be delighted. His eyes shone. I wanted to weep. I had the feeling I was like an animal that was being corralled. Such ego, such self-importance. Seriously, Carlos? Are you so fragile that you can't be teased? Am I frightening you, little Carlos? Don Gennaro asked and seemed really concerned. You look like a wild horse. Tell him a story, Don Juan said. That's the only thing that calms him. They moved away and sat in front of me. Both of them examined me with curiosity in the semi-darkness. Their eyes seemed glassy, like enormous pools of water. Their eyes were awesome. They were not the eyes of people. They stared at each other for a moment, and then I moved my eyes away. I noticed that I was not afraid of them, and yet their eyes had frightened me to the point that I was shivering. I felt a most uncomfortable confusion. After a moment of silence, Don Juan urged Don Gennaro to tell me what had happened to him at the time he had tried to outstare his ally. Don Gennaro was sitting a few feet away, facing me. He did not say anything. I looked at him. His eyes seemed to be 4 or 5 times the size of ordinary human eyes. They were shining and had a compelling attraction. What seemed to be the light of his eyes dominated everything around him. Don Gennaro's body seemed to have shriveled and looked more like the body of a feline. I noticed a movement of his cat-like body and became frightened. Way, as if I had been doing it all my life, I adopted a fighting form and began beating rhythmically on my calf. When I became aware of my acts, I got embarrassed and looked at Don Juan. He was peering at me as he does ordinarily. His eyes were kind and soothing. He laughed loudly. Don Gennaro made a purring sound and stood up and went inside the house. Don Juan explained that Don Gennaro was very forceful and did not like to piddle around, and that he had been just teasing me with his eyes. He said that, as usual, I knew more than I myself expected. He made a comment that everyone who was involved with sorcery was terribly sorry. He made a comment that everyone who was involved with sorcery was terribly dangerous during the hours of twilight, and that sorcerers like Don Gennaro could perform marvels at that time. We were quiet for a few minutes. I felt better. Talking to Don Juan relaxed me and restored my confidence. Then he said that he was going to eat something, and that we were going for a walk, and that Don Gennaro would show me a technique for hiding. I asked him to explain what he meant by the technique for hiding. He said he was through with explaining things to me because explaining only forced me to indulge. Yeah, one moment. Something in my eye and making the text a little bit fuzzy. We went inside the house. Don Canaro had lit this kerosene lantern and was chewing a mouthful of food. After eating, the three of us walked into the thick desert chaparral. Don Juan walked almost next to me. Don Gennaro was in front, a few yards ahead of us. It was a clear night. There were heavy clouds, but enough moonlight to render surroundings quite visible. At one moment, Don Juan stopped and told me to go ahead and follow Don Gennaro. I vacillated. He pushed me gently and assured me it was all right. He said I should always be ready and should always trust my own strength. I followed Don Gennaro, and for the next 2 hours I tried to catch up with him. But no matter how hard I struggled, I could not overtake him. Don Juan's silhouette was always ahead of me. Sometimes he disappeared, as if he had jumped to the side of the trail, only to appear again ahead of me. As far as I was concerned, this seemed to be a strange and meaningless walk in the dark. I followed because I did not know how to return to the house. I could not understand what Gennaro was doing. I thought he was leading me to some recondite place in the chaparral to show me the technique Don Juan had talked about. At a certain point, however, I had the peculiar sensation that Don Gennaro was behind me. I turned around and caught a glimpse of a person some distance behind me. The effect was startling. I strained to see in the darkness, and I believed I could make out the silhouette of a man standing perhaps 15 feet away. The figure was almost merged with the big bushes. It was as if he wanted to conceal himself. I stared fixedly for a moment, and I could actually keep the silhouette of the man within my field of perception, even though he was trying to hide behind the dark shapes of the bushes. Then a logical thought came to my mind. It occurred to me that the man had to be Don Juan. Here we go again into his rationalizing trickery stuff. Yeah, Carlos. It occurred to me that the man had to be Don Juan, had to be, who must have been following us all the time. The instant I became convinced that this was so, I also realized I could no longer isolate his silhouette. All I had in front of me was the undifferentiated dark mass of the desert chaparral. I walked towards the place I had seen the man, but could not find anybody. Don Gennaro was nowhere in sight either, and since I did not know my way, I sat down to wait. A half hour later, Don Juan and Don Gennaro came by. They called my name out loud. I stood up and joined them. We walked to the house in complete silence. I welcomed the quiet interlude, for I felt completely disoriented. In fact, I felt unknown to myself. Wonderful, wonderful. This is what they're trying to get him to do, to drop this connection to his self. His self is so rigid and so limited and so confined and so lame. It's like, come on, man, you got to let it go at some point. Don Gennaro was doing something to me, something which kept me from formulating my thoughts the way I was accustomed to doing. This became evident to me when I sat down on the trail. I had automatically checked the time when I sat down, and then I had remained quiet as if my mind had been turned off. Yet I sat in a state of alertness I have never experienced before. It was a state of thoughtlessness, perhaps comparable to not caring about anything. The world seemed to be, during that time, in a strange balance. There was nothing I could add to it, and nothing I could subtract from it. Nothing I could subtract from it. When we arrived at the house, Don Gennaro rolled out the straw mat and went to sleep. I felt compelled to render my experiences of the day to Don Juan. He did not let me talk. All right, I want to leave it here because on this discussion, I want Bina to be here for it tomorrow, and we're close to the time anyway, and it's a good point to end it, right? And we have some important takeaways here. That this point of where he was in that thoughtlessness state, but he was alive and he was alert. We think we think we've got to comment on everything internally. And we're always running this commentary, and we think we're supposed to do this, we should do this. Because what is that? It's our ego saying, I'm clever. Look at my clever comments. Look how self important I am. Or it's making me feel confident or comfortable. I'm figuring things out. Look, I know stuff. Look, I can figure it out. But we're always reassuring ourselves with that talk. We're reassuring the ego that it's okay. We're reassuring ourselves we're safe. We're reassuring ourselves we're competent and confident, etc., etc. Always reassuring. We don't need that. We don't need that, but we think we do. So we need to learn to be comfortable with ourselves, but we don't need to be reassured. In other words, we have to stop feeling so insecure. And the only way to do that is to be comfortable with it, because you are never, ever going to be fully secure. You'll have to be the universe for that to happen, right? So we have to get comfortable with insecurity and say, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Very important. Very, very, very important. Very powerful. So there's a lot going on here. And I would say for later, stick a pin in this, because in later books there's going to be another explanation. We're going to get a surface explanation, but there's a deeper explanation, which makes it all make sense, right? In a more honest way. And it's very powerful, very powerful. There are lots of layeredness to the story, and that's why, or at least this book, this series, and it's why we are doing this capital R reading of it. There's a lot of value in it, as we're going to see, especially in the next book. A lot of more honest value, personal things that you can learn to build your character, learn to build your awareness, your discernment, your understanding, your way of being. All of this, right? Very, very powerful, practical things that can be used and applied. There's also a way of looking at the world, but more from a mourners culture point of view, because that's what we're doing in our lives. This is all about mourners culture, right? We are getting to understand that the world doesn't work the way we think it does, right? And when we look at it from that point of view, and like I said before, with Carlos's default to being terrified when he encounters the unknown, you can be exhilarated and at encountering moreness. Right? It's a default way of thinking. So we're changing our perceptions, we're changing our assumptions, we're changing our beliefs, we're changing our defaults. Very, very, very powerful. So I'm utilizing the reading to illustrate mourners culture. Yes, there's a lot of ways to do it, both in Carlos, in his exemplification of superiority paradigm culture, and Don Juan and Gennaro as exemplifications of an entirely different way of being. Yes, completely other. Right? And again, we mustn't make this mistake to say, oh, they're Indians. Well, first of all, not all of the people in Don Juan's party are. And secondly, what they are doing isn't Indian. It's their culture, which is anybody can participate in that culture, and there are others. It's not an Indian thing specifically. They happen to have started as Indians, but where they ended up, it's not Indian, right? They went way past that, right? And the same way as Carlos, he's a typical uh, intellectual from the university. He's an anthropologist doing field studies, but where he ends up, it's got nothing to do with that, right? It's just where he's starting at. So where they start, not where they end. Very important to understand. Very, very important to understand. Where they start is not where they end. Now, we mustn't confuse the two. We tend to do that, and we tend to limit ourselves by our definitions. I'm a this, I'm a that. In way of impeccability, the program I put together, self-conception is very, very important. Not self-definition, self-conception. We need to learn to reconceive ourselves. And this is a problem for Carlos. He has a definition of himself, and it's so rigid and limited, he can't break out of it. If you had shifted to self-conception, self-conception is open, it's fluid, it's flexible, can take you anywhere. Yes? And they try with a warrior conception, but Carlos isn't grasping it, hasn't made it his own. In way of impeccability, I use the term spirit warrior, because a lot of people think warrior is about fighting and violence, and it has negative connotations. But spirit warrior, well, obviously not. But you could say I'm a spirit explorer, a spirit adventurer, I'm a power learner, like Bina. That's how she conceives of herself. See, a conception is open-ended, take you anywhere. And a self-conception allows you to do things that you would not ordinarily be able to do with your regular definition. Ridiculously powerful. All right, we'll end it there for today. It's a pity Bina didn't come back, but we'll see you all tomorrow. We'll see you all tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's Wednesday, so we'll see you all tomorrow. And Bree, hello, Bree, hello. It's nice to see you there. And NM913, I don't know if I must pause there. NM 913. I'm not sure if that's how you say your name, but hello. And of course to Dushkatari, and Lubna was also hanging around earlier, I saw. So hello, Dushka and Lubna. Marvelous, wonderful people that you are. Always, always love when you come here. Always love. I want to hear more from you. I want to hear more from you. I'd like to hear your comments and your ideas and thoughts. Yeah, yeah. Very cool. All right, all right. We'll see you all tomorrow. Bye bye, everybody. Bye bye, bye bye, bye bye.